Last night's episode of The View witnessed an extraordinary confrontation when Steve Martin was forcibly removed from the studio after Joy Behar called him a relic of white male comedy and suggested he should make room for diverse voices instead of clinging to relevance. The comedy legend didn't just defend his career. He delivered a quiet but devastating examination of Joy's own decades of cruel humor that left her exposed as the very thing she claimed to oppose. But what started as promotion for Martin's new memoir would reveal something disturbing about how The View treats gentle souls who refuse to engage in their theatrical outrage. The ABC studios were unusually tense from the moment Martin arrived. The 79-year-old comedian was there to discuss his book reflecting on kindness and comedy, but Joy Behar had prepared something entirely different. A production assistant later revealed that Joy had specifically told writers to go after his privilege and make him acknowledge he's taking up space. The warm-up comedian had been making jokes about banjo players who won't retire and comedians who peaked when Nixon was president. Several staffers expressed concern about attacking Martin, with one senior producer reportedly saying, "He's literally the nicest person in entertainment," only to be dismissed by Joy with, "Nice is just another word for complicit." Therefore, when the cameras rolled, Martin was walking into an ambush that would backfire spectacularly. The show opened with typical panel discussion, but Joy made several pointed comments about comedy's old guard refusing to pass the torch and white men who think they're still relevant. Martin waited backstage with his characteristic serenity, reviewing notes about his charity work rather than preparing for combat. His manager would later reveal that Martin had actually considered canceling, sensing the hostile intent, but decided to appear because he'd committed to promoting a literacy program the book supported. When Whoopi finally announced, "Please welcome Steve Martin," he walked out with his gentle smile, his demeanor suggesting someone attending a garden party rather than entering an arena. "Steve, welcome to The View," Whoopi said warmly, genuinely pleased to see him. But Joy immediately interjected. "Steve, don't you think it's time to step aside? You've had your decades. Maybe let someone else have a chance," she said bluntly. Martin paused, studying Joy with curious eyes. "Step aside from what exactly, Joy? Creating? Living? Breathing?" he asked mildly. "From taking opportunities that could go to diverse voices. You're a wealthy white man. You don't need this," Joy pressed. "I see. And you're suggesting I should stop working because of my race and gender?" "There's a word for that," Martin replied calmly. "It's not discrimination. It's equity," Joy claimed. "It's ageism mixed with racism, actually. But you've wrapped it in progressive language, so it sounds noble," Martin observed. Therefore, the philosophical trap was set immediately. The other hosts looked uncomfortable. Sarah Haynes tried to soften the moment. "Steve, I think Joy means," she began. "I know what she means. She means I should disappear because I don't fit her current political aesthetic. The irony is, she's been in that chair for 27 years. By her logic, shouldn't she step aside for someone younger, more diverse?" Martin asked. Joy's face reddened. "That's different. I'm a woman in media," she said. "You're a wealthy white woman who's made millions mocking people. If we're discussing privilege and space-taking, shall we examine yours?" Martin suggested gently. He stood up slowly, his movement careful and non-threatening. "You know what fascinates me, Joy? You've spent decades doing cruel comedy, mocking people's appearance, intelligence, and choices. Now you're lecturing me about taking up space? You've taken up space with cruelty. I've tried to fill mine with kindness," he said. "My comedy challenges power," Joy defended. "Your comedy punches in all directions. You've mocked presidents and janitors equally. That's not challenging power. That's just being mean with a microphone," Martin replied. But then he revealed something that changed the energy. "Do you remember when you mocked that young actress for her stutter? She was 19. She attempted suicide after your segment. Did you know that?" he asked quietly. Joy's face went pale. I didn't know," she stammered. "You didn't care? She was just material to you." Another punchline. "And now you're lecturing me about harm?" Martin asked. He turned to the audience. And this is where something important happens. "You know, there are people watching who've been told they should disappear because of their age, their race, their gender, from any direction. That's wrong. Everyone deserves to create, to contribute, to exist. If you've been told you're taking up too much space simply by being, please share this moment. Comment your support for others who face this. Like this video to spread the message that creativity belongs to everyone. Your engagement might help someone else who's been told they should step aside for arbitrary reasons, he said directly to the camera. The audience response was powerful. Many applauded, though some sat uncomfortably with the confrontation. But Joy, defensive and cornered, made things worse. At least I'm not a dinosaur pretending to be relevant, she said nastily. Martin smiled sadly. I'm not pretending anything, Joy. I'm creating art, writing books, composing music. You're sitting in that same chair, making the same cruel jokes, having the same angry reactions. Which one of us is the dinosaur? He asked. You don't understand progress, Joy claimed. I understand that progress isn't achieved by telling people to disappear based on immutable characteristics. That's regression disguised as revolution, Martin replied. He moved closer to her position. You know what's really tragic? You could use your platform to celebrate all artists. Instead, you've chosen to segregate them by demographics. You've become the very bigotry you claim to oppose, he said. How dare you call me a bigot? Joy said, standing up angrily. What else do you call someone who says people should stop working based on their race and gender? If a conservative said that about anyone else, you'd destroy them. But you say it about white men and expect applause, Martin observed. The logic was undeniable. Joy struggled to respond. But she made her fatal mistake. Security, get him out of here. He's being disruptive, she called out. The audience erupted. Having security remove Steve Martin for calmly discussing discrimination was disastrous. Many booed Joy loudly. Some stood to leave in protest. You're having me removed for discussing discrimination? Please, continue. The irony is perfect, Martin said calmly. Two security guards approached extremely reluctantly. One whispered, Mr. Martin, I'm so sorry. My kids love your books. Martin patted his shoulder kindly. No apology needed, young man. You're doing your job with dignity. That's more than some can say, he said, looking directly at Joy. He addressed Joy one last time. You know what makes this particularly sad? You're 79, the same age as me. But instead of using our shared experience to build bridges, you're using yours to burn them. Instead of celebrating that we're both still creating, you're demanding I stop. That's not progressivism, Joy. That's just bitterness, he said. Get out, Joy said, her voice shaking with rage. I'm leaving. But remember this moment. You had Steve Martin removed for refusing to accept discrimination. You've become everything you spent decades claiming to fight against, he said. He walked toward the exit, then turned back. Oh, and that young actress with the stutter? She's directing films now. She survived your cruelty and thrived. Maybe think about that the next time you decide who deserves to take up space, he said. He left to massive, sustained applause. Most of the audience gave him a standing ovation. Many walked out with him. The show went to immediate commercial. Within minutes, #Joy Behar discrimination was trending globally. The clip of her telling Martin to step aside based on race and gender went viral instantly. The hypocrisy of demanding discrimination while claiming progressivism was stark. But the real impact came from the revelation about the actress. Internet detectives quickly identified her, and she confirmed Martin's account, posting, Steve Martin called me after Joy Behar mocked my stutter. He spent hours telling me I mattered. He saved my life. The contrast between Joy's cruelty and Martin's kindness went viral. More stories emerged of Martin quietly helping people Joy had mocked. The pattern was devastating. The View returned without Joy. Whoopi awkwardly explained she was taking a moment, but everyone knew she'd been exposed and couldn't face it. The next day brought severe consequences. Disability rights organizations condemned Joy's history of mocking impediments. Mental health advocates highlighted the harm of her cruel comedy. Sponsors withdrew support immediately. ABC faced another crisis. How could they keep someone who'd driven a teenager to attempt suicide with mockery while claiming moral authority? The network went into damage control mode. Martin's response was characteristically graceful. He published a short essay titled, the space we share, never mentioning joy but arguing that creativity should be boundless, that telling anyone to step aside based on immutable characteristics was wrong, regardless of the target. The essay became required reading in discussions about reverse discrimination and ageism. It sparked conversations about whether progressivism could become its own form of prejudice. Joy attempted an apology the next day, but it made things worse. She claimed Martin had misunderstood, while also saying, "White men have had their time." The contradiction exposed her true beliefs. The incident became known as the Martin Mirror, showing people their own prejudices reflected back at them. It demonstrated how discrimination disguised as progressivism was still discrimination. Years later, Joy would be quietly removed from the view, her decades of cruel comedy finally catching up when society realized cruelty wasn't comedy, regardless of its political direction. But that night, all anyone saw was Steve Martin refusing to disappear because someone deemed him the wrong color and gender, refusing to accept that his contributions were less valid because of his demographics, refusing to let discrimination hide behind progressive language. He'd been kicked off the show, but he'd kicked down the notion that bigotry was acceptable if aimed at the right targets. The security guards who'd escorted him revealed they'd apologized profusely backstage, with one saying, "You're everything Joy Behar isn't kind." That kindness became the lasting image. Steve Martin, removed for refusing discrimination, walking away with dignity while Joy Behar sat exposed as someone who'd become the very bigotry she claimed to oppose. The empty chair he left represented everyone told to step aside based on race, gender, or age from any direction. It stood for the principle that discrimination was wrong regardless of its target. And Joy Behar, who'd spent decades claiming to fight prejudice, was exposed as practicing it openly while expecting praise for her progressivism. The difference was absolute. Martin continued creating across all mediums, helping all people. Joy continued sitting in the same chair, dividing people by demographics. One had been removed from a show. The other had removed herself from moral consistency. Everyone watching understood that progress couldn't be achieved through regression, that fighting discrimination with discrimination just created more discrimination, and that Steve Martin's gentle resistance had exposed the ugly bigotry hiding behind Joy Behar's progressive mask.